Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Naheed Nenshi, the MLA-elect for Edmonton-Strathcona, the leader of the Alberta New Democrats, and the leader of the opposition designate. That was just for you, Catherine, with the great titles. I thought you'd appreciate that. Thanks so much for being able to assemble together on such short notice. There's a lot of news. There are a lot of things for us to discuss, and I'm joined today by the MLA for Edmonton City Centre and our Shadow Minister of Public Safety, David Shepherd. So we've had a lot go on in the last few days since we've had a chance to talk. We have had a number of things that highlight the United Conservative Party and Danielle Smith's agenda of cuts, chaos, and corruption, not to mention a little bit of cruelty, and just show that this government continues to teeter on the brink. So their response to an upcoming teacher strike and the fact that we have had enormous problems in the public school system with class size and complexity is to set up yet another task force. This isn't to keep your teachers from going on strike in September. And yet again, from this government, it's work avoidance that is preventing actually solving the problems that they themselves have caused. Today, we had an announcement on yet more advancing on the creation of Alberta Provincial Police, and David will have much more to say about that. But fundamentally, let's remember, this is something nobody wants, nobody asked for, and is going to cost us billions of dollars just so Danielle Smith can say she did something. It doesn't address the causes of rural crime, and it doesn't help a single person feel any more safe in this community. We had Danielle Smith, after her blistering losses in the by-elections, which were just last week, believe it or not, after her blistering losses, developed this 15-panel, millions and millions of dollars of wasted taxpayer money, Alberta Next Do Nothing tour. She actually took the mandate for that tour, half from the last Do Nothing panel and half from her Chief of Staff's ramblings about free Alberta and Alberta separation. Again, we've already had conversations on the Alberta pension plan. Nobody wants it. On the Alberta Police Service, nobody wants it. Equalization, everybody hates it, and you haven't done a single thing since the last referendum to make it any better. And of course, separatism, Premier, nobody wants it. And you have frozen investment in Alberta for at least the next year, where no matter what the federal government does on pipelines, not one person is going to invest $1 to build a pipeline until this Premier is gone, or at least until separatism is out of the way. And for the political nerds in the room, today we heard of the creation of yet another Conservative party in Alberta. So if these folks are successful, we will then have a separatist party, another separatist party, and a party that says they're not corrupt by using the name of a previously corrupt party. Folks, this is the world we live in. And essentially what we have is one real choice for Albertans, one real choice of folks who will sit down and get the work done, who will improve the economy, create jobs, fix healthcare, fix education, and end this system of cuts, chaos, corruption, and cruelty. And frankly, your only choice, if you believe in Canada and if you believe in better government, is the Alberta New Democrats. So I'll stop there and turn it over to my colleague, David Shepherd.
Well, thank you, Naheed. Well, when it comes to the announcement today from the Public Safety Minister and from the Premier, what we're seeing is that, once again, they're just putting the cart ahead of the horse. I mean, if it walks like a duck, if it talks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. So whatever they want to call it. The Independent Agency Police Service, the Alberta Sheriff's Police Service, it is a provincial police force. You know, they stood today and they claimed this is not about replacing the RCMP. Well, frankly, that's about as believable as the Premier's claims that she's not trying to stoke Alberta separatism. Because frankly, we have seen that their actions do speak louder than their words, or, you know, perhaps as loudly as their words. I watched Public Safety Minister Mike Ellis stand on the floor of the legislature repeatedly this spring and attack and undermine the work of the men and women of the RCMP in this province. It's very clear he has a vendetta against the RCMP. Now, let me be clear on this. We don't disagree with the government that there is a problem here. There is a real need for action to address crime, improve safety in our mid-sized cities and our rural communities. We've heard that very clearly in the conversations we've had across the province. But we just don't believe that the UCP are actually interested in bringing forward an actual solution. No, this is a government that has a one-track mind. They're only interested in doing things that advance their interests, building their power, and building their influence, unfortunately, currently through stoking separatism. And as Naheed says, that is directly where this policy comes from. It's a provincial police force. It's a zombie idea, one that the vast majority of Albertans have repeatedly rejected. But the UCP are refusing to let it go. They keep trying to bring it back to life and force it through. And you can tell they're not doing this out of the best interests of Albertans because, frankly, they're refusing to talk to or listen to Albertans about this. This all started last year, Bill 11. Public Safety Minister Mike Ellis brought in Bill 11, blindsided municipalities with his creation of this new independent police service. And they said, look, if you're going to go any further with this, sit down and talk to us. Bring us some details, costing, plans, show us how this whole thing is going to work. For a year, he ghosted municipal leaders across the province, refused to provide a single detail, until he suddenly this spring introduced Bill 49, ramping up his efforts and leading directly to today. Now, rural leaders, Alberta sheriffs, everyone that's involved in policing rural communities, they've been calling on him to actually talk to them about this. These are the people that are required for this to be successful. And the minister refuses to talk to them about the costs, the logistics, the realities of how this is going to operate. You know, clearly, this is not a government that has any actual plan for public safety. They have a bunch of episodic policies torn, as Naheed said, directly out of the pages of separatism. We do have a plan. Back in March, we released our public safety blueprint, which is an actual plan on taking strong action to address crime as well as the roots of crime, to properly fund policing, improve access to our court system, and also address the things that are driving crime, that are creating pressure on our police, creating pressure on our court system by having actual access to mental health and addiction services. Actual folks on the ground alongside police who can help deal with folks who are struggling. Actually investing in housing and building an actual continuum that takes people from the street to stability in our communities. This government has shown no plan. And what they've announced today is not, in fact, a plan. It's going to be a mess. And it's going to be incredibly expensive for Albertans. With that, we're happy to take questions.
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to start with questions in the room. If you're on Zoom, don't forget to just raise your hand, and we'll come to you right as well. Making his way to the microphone right now is Eric, and I'm sorry, Eric, is it Bell or Beck?
Bay.
Bay.
That's the camera guy.
Bay. Okay. Eric Bay from Global Edmonton has a question.
Mr. Nenshi, you brought up the potential of a new political party forming here. I guess just how viable do you see that this could gain any traction here in Alberta?
Well, I certainly think that Peter Guthrie and Scott Sinclair have an important point they've made. And the point they've made is that this UCP government is too corrupt even for them. That this UCP government is very, very, very bad with money and is frittering away taxpayers' money. Hey, we agree with those two things. The point that we would make is that you already have a great option, and that option is the Alberta New Democrats. So certainly we wish Mr. Sinclair and Mr. Guthrie well. We would point out to their former colleagues across the aisle that if one more of them crosses the aisle, then Mr. Guthrie and Sinclair don't need those signatures anymore. If two more of them cross the aisle, then they become a registered political party in the legislature. I think the most important thing to remember here is, if my math is right, the Premier is down to a majority of 4. If 2 more leave, then it's 2 including the Speaker. So this is the smallest government majority Alberta has ever had. The UCP is already teetering. It is far from united. The Premier has no control over her own caucus. And as much fun as this is to watch as the opposition, it means that she's doing an even worse job of focusing on the things that Albertans really need, because she's only focused on saving her own political skin. And it's going to be harder and harder to save.
Follow up, Eric? Thanks, no. Catherine Krakowski, Alberta Today.
So initially, the government said that they would not move ahead with a provincial police until there was a referendum, but it seems like they're moving ahead, but they're also putting it on to a question through the Alberta Next panel. Mm-hmm. If you said that they're not listening, what more type of consultation would you like other than the Alberta Next?
Well, they're making it up as they go along. So they're pretending to consult while they're moving forward with their plan. The Premier says she's not replacing the RCMP, and her minister standing right behind her a minute later says, oh, this is all about replacing the RCMP. So this just shows you can't trust what Danielle Smith says. You got to look at what she does, and it's helpful to look at the people behind her to see what's really going on. But here's the thing. On the one hand, they're saying we're moving forward with this. On the other hand, they're pretending to consult with people. On the one hand, they're saying we'll have a referendum. On the other hand, they're pretending to consult. They're moving forward and not doing any consultation. It was Canada Day yesterday. And one of the great things for me traveling all around central and northern Alberta was I got to speak with lots of RCMP members. Real hot day, and they were standing in their red serge posting for pictures with tourists. But I had the opportunity to ask them what they thought about this. And they said what we already know. Municipalities don't want it. People across the province have clearly said they want to keep the RCMP. And the Premier is using separatism as a guise to push forward what she and her Chief of Staff have always wanted to do. And fundamentally, it's not fair, it's not democratic, and it's not right. This is the same Premier who ran an election in 2023 saying nobody is going to touch your pension. And she's now spent tens of millions of dollars on taxpayer money trying to convince us to leave the CPP, and nobody wants to leave the CPP, so she's doing it back to her panel again. Ultimately, it's time for Albertans to say to this Premier, we've had enough. Stop messing around, do your job, or get out of the way and let somebody else who knows how to do it do your job.
And it was pointed out on a podcast that Peter Guthrie and Scott Sinclair were on this morning that, well, last time there was a progressive Conservative Party and another Conservative Party, the NDP formed government. What do you think about this possibility of, well, I guess three, the Separatist Party, PC Party? How does that fare for your electoral chances?
It's funny that it's called the United Conservative Party when it is anything but united. Look, we're going to win that election anyway. God willing, Albertans are really responding to what we're saying. But if I'm the Premier and I dropped 15 points in the by-election in the Conservative heartland of Olds, Didsbury, Three Hills, then I know that a 15-point drop anywhere else means she's decimated in the election. And our job now is to turn to Albertans and say you have a much better alternative. You don't have to pick a side in the decaying Conservative movement. You don't have to pick between the Trumpists and the Separatists, or the Separatists and the other Separatists. You actually can pick a better alternative, a true Albertan alternative, the Alberta New Democrats, and we're just going to continue to make that case.
Okay, we're going to go to Zoom now, and first up is Sean Amato from City News. Sean, go ahead.
Win. Wanted to ask you, any idea what all of these policing moves are going to cost Albertans? I've asked the Premier's office today for a figure. I'm hoping to get one by the end of the day. But what do you think? I mean, it must cost more to have a bunch of different chiefs and a bunch of different agencies than it would maybe to have one umbrella agency.
Yeah. Like with healthcare, the government makes it up as they go along, and they don't care anything about the cost. I remember this is a government that went from a $6 billion deficit to a $6 billion surplus to a $5.5 billion deficit in 1 year, and then said, oops, it wasn't a deficit, it was an $8.7 billion surplus. In the private sector, any CFO who got their forecast wrong by $8 billion would not be in their job. But we know that this government's own figures from 2021 suggest that the creation of an Alberta Provincial Police would cost at least $1.4 billion, and that was before the inflation that we've seen. So I think it's fair to say that this misadventure, if fully implemented, will cost Albertans more than $2 billion.
Follow-up, Sean?
Yes, please. Today, the Premier posted a video about immigration. She wants to talk about immigration, and one of the things the video suggested was that newcomers to Alberta who were not approved by the province would not have access to provincial services. What is your response to that?
You know, this Premier, whenever she's in trouble, looks for somebody to blame. She looks for vulnerable organizations to punch down on. Could be vulnerable kids, could be people on AISH, could be people with disabilities. Now she's chosen immigrants. You know, after her crushing defeat in Edmonton-Ellerslie, you think she'd know better than that. But she has chosen immigrants. She's just punching down. She's using incredibly inflammatory language like the right kind of people, people I approve of. Well, forget about the fact that everything she's saying is blatantly unconstitutional. Guess what? The dog whistle is audible to everybody, Premier. We all know exactly what you're doing. You're punching down on racist, angry tropes to hide the very real concerns people have about population growth. And I'll remind folks, why is Alberta growing so much? Not because the federal government is bringing in too many immigrants, it's because the provincial government, the UCP government, ran a program called Alberta is Calling, said everybody come here, and then didn't build any schools, or hire any doctors, or build any transit, or do anything to build affordable housing. So again, they've created a problem, and they're trying to solve it by dog whistling and making people angry, and Albertans deserve so much better than that.
Sean, did you have another question?
You're giving him 3, Kirk, you're so nice.
I appreciate it, but I'm good. Thanks, guys.
Okay, just looking at who's on Zoom and everything, does anybody else have a question that they would like to ask before we call a wrap on this? Going once? It looks like we've got everybody. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. Mind how you go.
Thanks, everybody. Happy Stampede.